Welcome back to the English Nook. Today, we are diving into a topic that almost every single language learner struggles with at some point on their journey.
Oh, absolutely. It is the ultimate goal, isn't it? Moving away from that exhausting mental habit of translating everything from your native language before you speak.
Exactly. It's that internal hamster wheel where you hear a question in English, translate it to your native language, formulate your answer, translate it back to English, and then finally say it out loud. By the time you speak, the conversation has already moved on.
I hear this from so many students. They tell me, Ethan, my brain feels completely fried after a 10-minute conversation because I'm translating nonstop. It's an incredibly frustrating roadblock. But today, we are going to unpack how to break that cycle.
Yes, because thinking in English isn't a magical gift that you either have or you don't. It is a skill. And just like riding a bike or cooking, it can be trained with the right habits.
And the good news for our B2 listeners is that you already have enough vocabulary to start doing this today. You don't need a massive advanced dictionary to think in English. You just need to change how you use the words you already know.
So, let's look at the root of the problem. Why do we translate in our heads in the first place? Usually, it's because of muscle memory. Your brain is lazy, in a good way. It wants to take the easiest, fastest path, which is always your native language.
Right. It's a comfort zone. When you try to speak English, your brain panics a little bit and runs back to what it knows. But to build fluency, we have to deliberately create a new path. We need to create linguistic triggers that make English the default choice for small moments throughout your day.
Throughout this episode, we are going to give you a concrete, step-by-step roadmap to make that happen. We will explore how to transition from naming single objects in your head to building internal monologues. And finally, how to handle those moments when you completely forget a word without panicking.
And of course, we'll wrap things up with our word tour, where we will look at the exact phrases and terms we use to describe this mental shift, like muscle memory, default choice, and imminent panic.
Hopefully, no real panic. So, if you are tired of feeling like a walking dictionary and you're ready to unlock natural fluency, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Your support keeps the Nook open for learners all over the world.
Grab your favorite notebook, take a deep breath, and let's clear out the mental clutter. Maya, where does the training actually begin?
It starts much smaller than you think, Ethan. And we are going to map it out right now. All right, Ethan, let's pull back the curtain and look at step number 1. If you want to think in English, you have to start small. You cannot expect your brain to suddenly debate global economics in a second language on day 1. You need to start with what I call the naming game.
The naming game? That sounds simple, but it's incredibly effective. Basically, look around your room right now, wherever you are listening. What do you see? Don't say it in your native language. Just point and mentally label it. Desk. Lamp. Coffee mug. Window. Laptop.
Exactly. It sounds almost too basic, right? But what you're doing here is incredibly strategic. You are bypassing the translation step completely. You are connecting the physical object directly to the English word, instead of routing it through your native language first. You are building a direct bridge.
And once you master the single words, you graduate to step number 2, becoming the internal narrator of your own life. This is where you start describing your actions in your head using very simple, basic sentences as you go about your day.
Oh, I love this one. Give our listeners a real-world example of how that sounds in practice, Ethan.
Sure. So, imagine you are in your kitchen in the morning. Instead of thinking about your day in your native language, you tell yourself a little story in English. I am making coffee. The water is hot. Where is my spoon? Ah, here it is. This coffee smells amazing. No one else can hear you, so there is absolutely zero pressure to be perfect.
That is the beauty of it. Your internal monologue doesn't have a grammar police. If you say the water are hot by mistake in your head, who cares? The goal here isn't flawless accuracy. The goal is cognitive immersion. You are training your brain to tolerate the feeling of operating entirely in English.
That phrase, cognitive immersion, is so important. It's all about familiarity. The more your brain gets used to hearing its own internal voice speaking English, the less it will panic when you have to speak out loud to a coworker, a client, or a friend.
Beautifully said. But what happens when you are narrating your morning routine and you suddenly hit a massive wall? You look at an object or you try to express a thought and you realize you don't know the word in English.
Ah, the ultimate roadblock. That is usually the exact moment where most learners give up, get frustrated, and run straight back to their native comfort zone.
It really is. But there is a specific strategy to handle that roadblock without breaking your momentum. And it's something we are going to dive into right now. Okay, Ethan. Let's talk about that moment we just mentioned. You are driving in your car, narrating your day in English, everything is flowing beautifully. And suddenly, you want to say, I need to fix the engine. But you completely forget the word for engine.
It's the worst feeling. Your brain just hits a brick wall. And what do most of us do? We immediately stop, pull out our phones, open a translation app, and look it up.
Exactly. And by doing that, you just broke the spell. You stepped out of the English room and ran back into your native room. My advice for B2 learners is simple. Do not look it up.
Wait, really? Don't look it up? But how do they finish the thought?
You describe it using the words you do know. This is a massive conversational superpower called circumlocution. If you forget engine, you say, the metal thing under the hood that makes the car move. It might sound a little funny in your head, but guess what? You kept your brain operating entirely in English. You didn't break the momentum.
That is brilliant, Maya. It's like playing a game of taboo with yourself. And honestly, that is exactly what native speakers do when we forget a word. We don't stop talking, we just say, oh, what's that thing called again? The device for changing channels on the TV. We use other words to bridge the gap.
Exactly. Perfectionism is the absolute enemy of thinking in English. Many intermediate learners think they can only step into fluent thought once they know every single word in the dictionary. But fluency isn't about having a flawless vocabulary. It's about being comfortable with the vocabulary you already have.
That is a huge mental shift. I think another big roadblock at the B2 level is the identity crisis. A lot of people tell me, Ethan, when I speak or think in my native language, I am funny, smart, and expressive. But when I try to think in English, I feel like a boring, simplified version of myself.
Oh, I hear you. That is so real. And it can be so discouraging. But you have to realize that it's just a temporary phase. Your English personality is like a young tree. It takes time to grow leaves and fruit. You have to tolerate feeling a bit simple at first so that you can become sophisticated later.
Wow, I love that analogy. Don't be afraid to sound simple to yourself. Accept that your internal monologue might feel a bit basic for a few weeks. The fluency comes first, the complexity comes later.
Precisely. So the next time you hit that wall, don't reach for the translator. Push through it, describe around it, and keep the momentum alive.
And speaking of keeping it alive, let's look at how we can transition these quiet mental exercises into actual, real-world habits that stick.
So we know how to play the naming game, we know how to become an internal narrator, and we know how to handle missing words. But how do we make this a permanent habit? How do we embed this into our actual lifestyle?
It comes down to designing an environment where your brain is forced to adapt. And the easiest, most immediate change you can make today is right in the palm of your hand. Change your phone's default language to English.
Oh, that is a classic move, but it is so powerful. Think about how many times a day you look at your phone. If every notification, every setting, and every app menu is in English, you are forcing your brain to see English as a tool for survival, not just a school subject.
Exactly. At first, it's going to feel a bit annoying. You might spend an extra 5 seconds looking for your calendar or your privacy settings. But that small friction is exactly what builds new muscle memory. You are teaching your brain that English is your primary operating system.
Another incredible habit for B2 learners is what I call active input echoing. When you're listening to an English podcast like this one, or watching a YouTube video, don't just let the audio wash over you passively. Every few minutes, pause the audio and try to summarize what you just heard out loud or in your head, using your own words.
That is a massive game changer, Maya. Because you aren't just consuming language, you are immediately processing it and turning it into an active thought. It forces you to construct sentences using the grammar structure you literally just heard.
Exactly. And finally, start small with a dedicated English zone. Pick just 15 minutes of your day, maybe during your morning commute or while you're washing the dishes at night. Promise yourself that during those 15 minutes, your native language is completely banned. No native podcasts, no native text messages, no native thoughts.
15 minutes a day is so achievable. It doesn't feel overwhelming, but if you do it consistently every single day, that adds up to over 90 hours of pure immersion a year. That is how real fluency is won. Not through massive, exhausting study marathons, but through tiny, daily habits.
Excel at the small steps, and the big breakthroughs will follow naturally. And to help our listeners anchor these steps, let's head straight into today's vocabulary recap. And welcome to the word tour. At the B2 level, growing your vocabulary isn't about memorizing rare, complicated words. It's about mastering practical, descriptive terms that help you explain your thoughts more smoothly.
Absolutely. Let's break down 4 key concepts we use today that will help you discuss your fluency journey.
First word on the list, muscle memory.
This is the ability to reproduce a particular movement or habit without conscious thought, built through repetition.
We used it to explain why your brain automatically wants to translate back into your native language. If you want to think in English, you have to build new linguistic muscle memory.
Word number 2, default choice.
A pre-selected option that a system or your brain falls back on when no alternative is specified.
Your native language is currently your brain's default choice. Our goal with these daily exercises is to make English the new default choice for small moments of your day.
Phrase number 3, cognitive immersion.
This means deep mental involvement or soaking your mind entirely within an environment, in this case, an English-speaking environment.
Playing the naming game and narrating your life forces your brain into cognitive immersion, making English feel safe and familiar.
And finally, word number 4, circumlocution.
This is a fancy linguistic word for a very simple, beautiful skill. Using many words to describe something when you can't think of the single exact word.
Remembering to use circumlocution instead of running to a translation app is the ultimate secret to keeping your mental momentum alive.
That is a fantastic toolkit for today. Now, we want to hear from you, our Nook community.
We have a challenge for you today. Look around the room you are in right now. Pick one object, but pretend you completely forgot the name for it in English. In the comments below, use circumlocution to describe it to us. Don't say the actual word. Let's see if other learners can guess what it is.
Yes, let's turn the comment section into a massive game of taboo. Go down there, leave your description, And if you read a comment from a fellow learner that makes you smile or guess right, hit that like button on their comment.
And if this episode gave you a concrete roadmap to stop translating in your head, please take a brief second to smash the like button on this video. It takes you one click, but it tells the algorithm that this content is helping real people, which helps our channel grow.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us at the Nook today. Change your phone settings, start small, protect your 15 minutes. And we will see you in the next episode.
Keep thinking in English, everyone. Bye for now.